we're the Bibliophile. Hey, we're the Bibliophile babes, and we are sisters who do book reviews. This week we'll be reviewing The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. My name's Amanda.
And I'm Alicia. So how I set up my individual reviews, because there are some differences in our like genres that we like. Like I like a lot of like historical fiction, where my sister doesn't, and she likes a lot of you picked out a few like biographies and stuff on Charles Darwin, right? I read stuff like that, but not usually. So sometimes there might be videos where it's just us individually reviewing the book.
We'd also love to hear from you guys if there's ideas that you guys have for our channel or specific books that you want us to review. If you want us to do readings or anything like that, please leave that down in the comments and we will look at that and try to deliver on that.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the blurbs so you guys get, like, for those of you who haven't read the book yet, you get like a general idea of what the book's about. Sussex, England. A middle-aged man returns to his childhood home to attend a funeral. Although the house he lived in is long gone, he is drawn to the farm at the end of the road, where, when he was 7, he encountered a most remarkable girl, Letty Hempstock, and her mother and grandmother. He hasn't thought of Letty in decades, and yet, as he sits by the pond, a pond that she claimed was an ocean, behind the ramshackle old farmhouse, the unremembered past comes flooding back, and it is a past too strange, too frightening, too dangerous to have happened to anyone, let alone a little boy. 40 years earlier, a man committed suicide in a stolen car at this farm at the end of the road. Like a fuse on a firework, this death lit a touch paper and resonated in unimaginable ways. The darkness was unleashed, something scary and thoroughly incomprehensible to a little boy. And Letty, magical, comforting, wise beyond her years, promised to protect him no matter what. A groundbreaking work from a master, The Ocean at the End of the Lane is told with a rare understanding of all that makes us human and shows the power of stories to reveal and shelter us from the darkness and inside and out. It is a stirring, terrifying, and elegant fable, as delicate as a butterfly's wing and as menacing as a knife in the dark. For me personally, that is like the perfect way to describe this book, and also like Neil Gaiman's work. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I think it was great. I love Neil Gaiman's work, and yeah.
I'd give it 5 out of 5 stars.
Usually for my videos, I do like the general review, and then we go more in depth, but my sister pointed out to me that it would make more sense just to put it in one video. So if you haven't read the book yet or don't want anything to be given away, then don't keep watching. For me, I like to talk about like my favorite parts and my favorite quotes and things like that. But sometimes I just like, I don't have a specific part that I really love. I just love the whole book.
Yeah, it's short enough that that's an easy thing to be able to say.
Yeah, so I think for me, I love the whole book. I can't say I have a favorite part, but one of my favorite quotes is when the main character says that, I forget the quote exactly, but he says something along the lines of, I love myths and fables because they're not for adults and they're not for children. They're better than that. They just are.
It's just the story with the lesson.
And I love that because a lot of the book, I feel like with Ursula Monkton and the whole like affair with his dad and just all the scary stuff that happens is very adult. So you do see that contrast of when you're a child and when you're looking into like the adult world and having to deal with that.
That's what I think is one of the things that's so brilliant about this book, is it really well captures the perspective of a 7-year-old, right? Because like he sees Ursula Monkton and his father hooking up, and he doesn't know what they're doing, but you do based on the way he describes it. And so it's like a really innocent take on a very adult situation.
And then you have the Hempstocks, who I adore. I love that whole family. I love the way they were written. One of my favorite quotes from the book too is the part where the main character, when he's 7 years old, from the perspective of when he's 7, he goes, "Adults should not cry, I knew this, for they did not have mothers to comfort them." That like made me cry, because it's so true. Like when you're an adult, I mean, even if like your parents are still around, I feel like, well, once you're an adult and you're on your own, your parents obviously aren't there all the time, or they aren't there anymore. So
I think it's kind of just a very naive way of looking at it, because he's a kid, so he's like, you know, as you get older, you learn to cope with your emotions better on your own. And to children, it's scary when an adult loses their emotions, because in their head, an adult is supposed to be composed all the time. So that's like, I think it's kind of really sweet that from the perspective of a child, it's scary that an adult is upset because they don't have a mother to comfort them.
Well, yeah, no, and that's true. I'm just saying, like, for me, first thing was that's really sweet because, like, your parents, even when you're older, because obviously when you get older, you learn to cope with your emotions and things like that. But there's still times where you're like, I want my mother to comfort me. You know what I mean? Like, I want my mother to be there to comfort me. And I just thought that was cute. Like, I thought that was really sweet.
One detail that I did like was that it was pretty heartbreaking at the beginning because, you know, the main character is kind of a kid that doesn't really fit in a lot of places. He doesn't have tons of friends. At the beginning, he has a birthday party that no one comes to. And it's heartbreaking. That is sad to think about as a child because it's ostracizing to you as a little kid, right? That, you know, nobody shows up to your birthday party.
Remember that happened to me for my 8th birthday at
yeah, I think that's kind of why it made me feel bad because I remember that I
invited like 20 people and like 2 people showed up. And I remember my dad got really mad because we had it at this like complex where they hold parties. And there was a bunch of stuff to do, like go-karting and things like that. So you had to pay ahead of time. And my dad was like, I paid for like 20 people and 2 people showed up. He wasn't, no, he didn't, he wasn't mad at me. I just overheard him say it and I felt really bad.
One of the other things that kind of just struck me in the book, partly I'm sure is because I'm just an animal person, but he kind of was an ostracized little kid. And he kind of gets wrapped up in books as kind of an escapist technique, which is smart. I mean, that's how a lot of little kids deal with their issues, is to lose themselves in a book. And that's kind of what he was always doing. And then he got a kitten, and
that part really
died. And then it was just so sad. They gave him this little kitten, and the diner who kills himself in the car killed the kitten in the car.
Yeah.
Eventually, like once he goes in the field where Ursula Monkton crawls out of, he like pulls this little sprout thing out of the ground, and it's a new kitten, and that kitten sticks around for a lot of the book.
What I also like is I was unfortunately exposed to a lot of very adult things, so I kind of realized like how ignorant it is to just trust somebody because they're an adult, or to just like,
well, that's a damaging mentality to impress on children anyways, that you should trust someone just because they're an adult.
Well, also, and to just like completely overlook like what a child's feeling or saying because they're a child. That's kind of what was happening towards the beginning of when Ursula Monkton came to stay and be their like nanny. And obviously she was like a supernatural like spirit being, so she was able to bear like considerable influence over the father like supernaturally. But before like she actually had like control of his mind, I guess you can say, he was still like, you need to have respect for her and stuff, when the little boy was like, I don't like her. I feel like that's really, really, really unfair. And I feel like a lot of adults do that. And I just think it was a really realistic depiction of like how that is. And also like, and again, I'm not condoning because it was a different time, because they still should have known better, but if this book, say, were in today's time period, then this would have been in like the 70s or like 60s or 70s England. You know what I'm saying? So I know like stuff like that, like people are like, oh, back in my day, we could like walk down the street at night and feel safe kind of deal, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's a really like ignorant like it was kind of an ignorant mindset. Not to say that like you should feel like you're in danger everywhere, but you know what I'm saying? I just think they depicted that like really realistically.
One of the things that I liked, one of the details that I really liked, was the difference in perspective that he has on the Hemstock women from when he's a child and then when he's an adult, because he's retelling his story. Those women were really strong, like warm, loving figures to him, and they helped him through a part of his life that other people didn't even believe was real and no one else knew about. And they were so like loving and inviting and just generally sweet to him. And like he talks about that and about how hard he cried when the night gaunts came, or whatever they're called. Is that what they're called?
They were like night hawks or something like that. They looked like birds.
Yeah, night gaunts are birds though. Because that's from the Graveyard Book too.
No,
so that's what I thought. That's
yeah,
what I
that would make sense. And I know they're birds. I just assumed, from my memory, I thought they were called nighthawks.
But when he's older, so the reason that he's even back in town visiting the Hemstock women and retelling this story to begin with, is that he goes back to his hometown for a funeral. I don't know if I remember whose
It doesn't
funeral
say.
was. It doesn't ever say. so he ends up kind of just needing some space from the funeral and everything, and he goes for a ride, and he winds up there at the house at the end of the lane and is visiting the Hempstock, you know, the grandmother and the mom. And mom ends up driving him home, and he's like kind of looking at Mrs. Hempstock, and he's talking about how she seemed when he was younger so strong, and she like wrapped him up in her arms and held him while he cried. And he said, I can't imagine ever being that close to her or like in that position with her now.
The way he described it was very interesting. I also liked that every time he left the property, because he didn't even realize throughout the years he kept going to that property again for like these issues that people didn't even realize were happening in his life, or like if
he just always went back there.
And I like that he forgot every time he left, because it was like they were relieving him of his pain, but at the same time it kind of emphasizes to me that like it doesn't matter, you know, if most people don't believe you, because there are, you know, you might have those few people who do, and those few like supportive people. So like even if he forgets and stuff, I still like I really liked that.
Well, one of the other things that I actually loved about that last part when Mrs. Hempstock was driving him home was she was talking about, so major spoiler alert, Letty kind of, that's her name?
Letty, yeah.
Letty kind of, she's not dead, but she's not alive really by the end of the book. And
well, if you guys are watching this, then that shouldn't be a spoiler, because all of what we're saying is spoiling.
Well, yeah, no, but I just wanted to put that out there. So he's talking, they're kind of like recounting the night that everything kind of came to a head, and she saved him. He ran out into the field, and the night gaunts like started to get him, and she jumped on top of him, and they got her too. And I guess it's kind of said that he died and came back to life. He was like, that's not how I remember it happening. And Mrs. Hempstock was like, everybody remembers things differently, dear. Like, I don't know. I think that's amazing too, because it's true. Everybody's memory is different, and it was good to not, like, I like not discounting what he was feeling just for.
Sorry, our niece came in, so.
She barges in on everything that I've ever done.
Yes, facts.
I love that Mrs. Hempstock doesn't discount his perspective.
Yeah, because everyone remembers everything differently.
I think it's really interesting because the Hempstocks aren't really, they state that they're not really witches, but they are kind of these like magical entities, because when he goes back to visit every time, they're still the same age that they were when he was a little kid. Like, they appear the same way they did when he was a child.
I also like what I love is just, it's really hard to keep like realistic themes in a fantasy book, because a lot of the times like morals and realistic stories that you're trying to tell can become like lost in the fantasy. And I think Neil Gaiman does an amazing job of like being able to tell stories that you can relate to, but also like them being so fantastical that you can't put down the book.
Yeah.
But okay, so that was our review on The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman.
We were a little scatterbrained. This is our first review together, so if you guys have recommendations, if you have more questions about the book, please feel free to leave those down in the comments, and we would love to answer them and address them as needed. Keep an eye out. Coming up, I mean, I've read a lot of books lately. I'm a nanny for the summer, so it gives me a lot of time to read, and I often read kids' books with the kids that I watch, so if reviews on those are something that you are interested in, also let me know. Keep an eye out for coming up. I will have a review of The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, which is a collection of short stories.
And I will be doing a review. I would love to do reviews on kids' books as well. I'm not nannying right now, but I would still love to do that because there's so many books.
I'm just saying I read them all the time. So if it
absolutely.
is something that you guys would like to see a review on, please let me know.
Because we both really love to do that. But like I said before, I'm very much a historical fiction buff like our mother. My sister is not. I would love to do a review on some classics like Pride and Prejudice. I actually already pre-filmed it, and I have to edit it. And I know it's a classic and everyone and their mother has probably read it, but there's still, you know, new generations being born every day, and there's still a lot of young people or just people in the world who haven't read it. And you know what? Not everyone has the same opinion, so I would love to share mine. It's a lot of the classics are my favorites, so yeah. So
if you have a part of this book that was particularly special to you, or want to discuss one of your favorite parts, favorite characters, what have you, please, like I said, leave a comment down below. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you guys so much for watching.
Bye.